Find the armory wagon. You're up. Get as many people as you can. This way, Barnes. Stick with the captain.
The scariest thing about Google Stadia isn't losing ownership of your games if the service were to shut down. It's not the idea of it replacing traditional consoles or hardware. And it definitely isn't the fact that there may be latency issues or input lag, no. My biggest fear about Google Stadia is people not being able to play their games. And I'm not talking about just not being able to play because you don't have a connection to the internet. I'm talking about region availability and game preservation. These two factors can easily be some of the worst parts about Google Stadia. And I don't mean to sound negative on it, as you can tell I do support the platform and I am super excited for it. I really do believe that the good outweighs the bad when it comes to cloud gaming. That being said, I think it's a discussion that needs to be had. And while I am a Stadia-focused channel, I believe that criticism is healthy when it makes sense, and in this case, those two factors really do seem like the worst of the worst, so let me break it down. First off, region availability is something I expect to get solved later down the road, but that doesn't really mean that it doesn't suck. I mean, once the Founders Edition launches, it's going to be available in these 14 countries. We're talking the United States, Canada, the UK, Ireland, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland. And looking at that list, it does cover quite a few bases. It's not a short list by any means, and it does cover some big countries. That being said, you're still missing out on some, for example, Japan, India, Australia, New Zealand, and many more. And while some of those countries just don't have the network infrastructure needed to support something like Stadia, at least not in a good capacity, that doesn't mean that it's not an issue. I mean, could you imagine missing out on a game like God of War, not because you don't have the money or the means to get it, but because your country just can't run it? Imagine by some means Google creates the next big thing, something like a new Call of Duty or a new Fortnite. Can you imagine just missing out on that whole part of gaming history? Now, I know those games don't really define everyone here. In fact, many of you probably don't even play either of those franchises, but take your favorite franchise, the one that got you into gaming in the first place. Now imagine not being able to play it simply because you live in a certain part of the world. That really does suck. Now, in my personal experience, a game like Call of Duty Modern Warfare was a pivotal moment in gaming. When I was in high school, that game was everything. And when Modern Warfare 2 came out, its sequel, it was a whole other level of hype and enthusiasm among everyone. And this all took place way before things like streaming took off. Now let's fast forward to last year. Imagine the impact Fortnite has had. Now, personally, I'm not even a big fan of the game, but nobody can deny just how much of an impact it's made on kids' lives growing up. I would even go as far to say that this game has somehow impacted cultures way outside of just the gaming hobby. From the emotes to the skins, we're talking about so many different forms of entertainment getting involved and partnering up with Fortnite. To list a few, we're talking about rappers like Drake, we're talking about brands like Nike, we're talking about sports franchises like the NFL. Even the blockbuster movie industry got involved with IPs like the Avengers and John Wick. It's impossible to deny just how much of an impact Fortnite has had on this generation's gamers. I mean, how many kids, you know what, scratch that. How many people have you been seeing doing this dance? And yes, I know this kid didn't invent it, but trust me, no one was doing this until the orange shirt kid brought it back. And yes, I get it, it's a meme, it's supposed to be funny, and I'm glad it's here. But if you're going to deny the fact that Fortnite played some sort of role in bringing this back, well, then you really need to think about it harder. Now, what I'm trying to get at is that for this kid, it may have been Fortnite. For me, it was Modern Warfare. For you, it could be WoW. For others, it could even be Pac-Man. Now imagine if that game was stripped from you just because you lived at the wrong place at the wrong time. And now that we live in such a connected world where someone like a video game streamer can be hosting a New Year's Eve party at New York Times Square, it would just really suck to know you're missing out on the next big thing when everyone else around you is enjoying it happily. Now, to be perfectly clear, this is something Google probably will address over time. The concern is about how long it'll take to get there. We've seen services like GeForce Now and PlayStation Now, neither of which support all that many countries still. The real hope here is that Google is the one to have the most servers set up, so hopefully they can work it out in a much faster pace. Now, as for the second concern, which is game preservation, I really want to talk seriously about this one because it's a serious topic. As consumers, we are slowly moving toward an all-digital era and have been for quite some time. Digital sales are starting to surpass physical retail sales, and that's why you see stores like EB Games or GameStop shutting down. If you paid attention, you would notice that both of those stores went from being a strictly video game store to a hybrid of a video game store and a store that sells nerd culture knickknacks. And this is because most consumers are now willing to buy their things digitally over physically. As you can see, most people don't care about technically owning the game. One of the criticisms faced with Stadia is that you can't resell your games, but as you can see, most people don't care. But even so, let's say you do have the digital copy downloaded, at least you do have the files necessary to play the game. But with Google Stadia, you'll never have access to those files because you'll never download the game itself, it'll just be streamed to you. Now the concern is, let's say Google Stadia shuts down for some reason sometime in the future. Does that mean all those exclusive titles just cease to exist? I really hope not, and I hope that Google has had a talk with developers on what they plan on doing if for some reason it were to shut down. I really hope that Google's made some sort of agreement with developers that if the service were ever to shut down, they could still retain the IP ownership and take it to a different platform. But having seen how business works, for some reason I highly doubt that's the case. And it's not like this sort of thing hasn't happened already. I mean, we can take a look at the demo for PT, for example, the Silent Hill game that was supposed to be made by Kojima. This demo blew up and everyone wanted in on it, and then suddenly it was taken away from the store. Not only was it taken away, but even if you had downloaded it previously, you wouldn't be able to re-download it. I even recall seeing PS4s with that demo installed being sold on eBay for thousands of dollars. And that definitely isn't the only example of this happening. Most recently we've had Drive Club, a PS4 racing game that came out near the launch of the PlayStation 4. The game got delisted for licensing reasons, and it only got delisted as of August 31st. That's only a few days ago. Luckily, that game did have a physical release, so you might still be able to find copies out in the wild, but it'll definitely be a lot harder to find. Another game that comes to mind is the indie game Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. It was a 2D beat 'em up, a fantastic one at that, but it also got removed due to licensing. In the description below, you can check out a link to a website called delistedgames.com where you can see a list of every game that's just no longer obtainable. As of right now, that list is 283 games strong. Of course, there are certain games you can still obtain through some illegal methods, but with Stadia, that won't even work. Stadia may very well be the first platform that no sort of emulation will ever exist for. And honestly, that's a real shame because developers pour their heart, sweat, and blood into these games. You can even read up on stories of developers who stay at development offices months at a time to get a game completely done. Developers who put everything on the line to get their dream project out there for people to enjoy. A good example of this is the Cuphead developers who remortgaged their homes to get this game done. And when I look at a game like Guilt by Tequila Works, a Stadia exclusive, you can tell that game means a lot to the developers behind it. It focuses on a strong narrative about bullying and childhood. That's the type of game that definitely wants an audience to hear it out. And it really would be such a shame to see a game like that get lost in the future. But ultimately, that's the sacrifice we have to make for the convenience of cloud gaming. For the infinite possibilities it brings for us to experience games in a whole new way, we have to give up something just as important. As someone who's a bit of a collector myself, it really sucks to admit it, but I think Stadia is doing the right move. Even if it does mean that some people may have to wait longer than others to be able to play certain games, even if it means that certain games are bound to be lost in the future. And when it comes to game preservation, I hate to admit it, but it just won't affect most people. Most people won't care whether a game is accessible anymore or not. If you didn't play Drive Club in the 6 years it was available, well then you probably weren't gonna play it anyways. The same goes for the games like Scott Pilgrim. If you really wanted to play that game, chances are you would have played it when it came out. As an enthusiast of gaming, yes, it bothers me that some games may be lost forever. But as an enthusiast of technology, it excites me for what possibilities that opens up. And at the end of the day, if you're not used to it with Stadia, you'll be getting used to it in the future. This is the way most gaming platforms are gonna move. Be it Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo. I see them all going this route eventually. And all you really have to do to figure that out is think like a business. What's gonna save you more money? What's gonna make you more money? Manufacturing physical copies of games and hardware and then having to redistribute them among retail stores that take a chunk of your money? Or you could just run everything server side and cut the middleman out and take even more profits for yourself. It is what it is, and that pretty much sums up today's video. Thank you for watching, and as a quick reminder, our Discord server is now live. If you want to be a part of the Gen S family, then please consider joining. The invite link will be in the description below, as well as the pinned comment of this video. Now, if you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. It really means a lot and helps out the channel in a significant way. And if you want more videos like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell below. I want this channel to be your daily source for everything and anything Stadia, from opinions to reviews and everything in between. I welcome everyone to join the Gen S family, and until next time, I'll catch you in the clouds. Peace.